Hey there, it's Jordan. I am delighted to be joined by human rights attorney Stephen Donziger. If you don't know who Stephen is or this story, it's one of the grossest miscarriages of justice I've seen in a very long time. Remember to smash the like button right under the video. Share it. Share this live stream if you can. I'm going to get right into it. So, Stephen, I'll just recap the story so we can get into the update. A lot of others in Ecuador on your team went after Chevron, won a huge civil settlement against Chevron for $9 billion after Chevron dumped, you know, deadly toxins into the Amazon and specifically in Ecuador. Instead of paying the settlement, Chevron decided to go on an all-out corporate political crusade against you. You've been under house arrest, I believe, now for just about 2 years for allegedly, contempt of court because you would not hand over phones, devices that had attorney-client privilege on them. And yesterday, you were convicted on 6 counts of contempt of court for this. Underneath all of this, you have a federal federal prosecutor decided not to prosecute you, seeing no case here. But then the extraordinary step was taken for a judge to hire a private company, a private lawyer, to prosecute you that has ties to Chevron. So can you talk about what specifically were you convicted for? What is there any legal basis in it for that conviction, and what are your next steps?
Thank you, Jordan. It's good to be here again with you, and thank you for your journalism. The fundamental story is Chevron is abusing the U.S. judicial system, in my view, with the help of 2 federal judges to punish me and my colleagues for our success as human rights lawyers in holding Chevron accountable for the world's worst oil-related pollution, which the company did over a 25-year period, and mostly in the 1970s and 80s in the Amazon of Ecuador, with the net result being that 5 indigenous nations are nearing extinction. Thousands of people have died in Ecuador from cancer. This was not an accident. Chevron deliberately, through its predecessor company Texaco, made the decision to dump billions of gallons of cancer-causing oil waste into the environment to save money. Pure greed. And we believe it's ecocide, which is hopefully going to become an international crime, meaning there was a deliberate decision to engage in practices that destroyed the environment in such a way that human life, as it had been known, could no longer sustain itself. So our team fought for years against every obstacle that Chevron put up, and there were a lot of them, to win a judgment in the preferred jurisdiction of Chevron, that is Ecuador. They were the ones who wanted the trial to be held there. They had promised to accept jurisdiction there, pay any adverse judgment. We won the case in 2011. It's historic, and the Ecuadorian communities deserve for Chevron to comply with that decision and pay for a cleanup. Rather than do that, Chevron went out and hired literally dozens of law firms, at least 2,000 lawyers, to attack me and my colleagues. They came back into the U.S. courts and found a pro-corporate judge, Lou Kaplan, former tobacco industry defense lawyer. They sued me for racketeering. They bribed a witness who came into court and claimed I had bribed the judge in Ecuador. They committed fraud in a U.S. court. Kaplan denied me a jury, and he credited the witness and found that the judgment could not be enforced in the United States. In the meantime, I and other lawyers helped enforce the judgment against Chevron's assets in Canada and other countries. We have several appellate court decisions affirming the validity of the judgment, including one from Canada's Supreme Court. That was too much for Chevron to bear. They went running back to Kaplan and claimed I owed them millions of dollars for their legal costs. Kaplan imposed an order that I pay them. I don't have the money. They then demanded to see my computer and cell phone because under the theory that I had some sort of hidden assets. I'm a human rights lawyer. I have virtually no assets. And what they really wanted was to harass me and find out, the inner workings of our legal team and get communications protected by the attorney-client privilege. I appealed the order. It's unlawful in my view. While Kaplan's order was on appeal, he charged me with criminal contempt with not complying with the order that was on appeal. And that resulted in me being locked up now for the last 2 years without a conviction until yesterday. There's a lot of very corrupt features about what's happening in my view. One is when Kaplan charged me, the U.S. attorney in New York, in Manhattan, the Southern District of New York, refused to prosecute me. He took the charges to them. They wouldn't take the case. They knew it was bogus. So Kaplan, rather than stop there, appointed a private law firm, as you point out, to prosecute me. It turns out the private law firm, the name of which is Seward and Kissel, and by the way, students from 55 law schools around the United States are boycotting the law firm for its unethical prosecution of me. Seward and Kissel and their partner Rita Glavin took the mantle, and they later disclosed that Chevron is a client of their law firm, and they have gained control of the machinery of the public prosecutorial power in the United States to go after Chevron's main critic, meaning me, and they locked me up, and I remain literally the only lawyer in American history locked up on a misdemeanor charge for even a day. And today is my 720th day. So yesterday's so-called conviction was the result of what we believe was a sort of a show trial they put on in May, with no jury. Kaplan appointed the judge, Loretta Preska. She is a member of the Federalist Society, right-wing legal group that Chevron is a major donor to. And, surprise, surprise, she found me guilty, and she basically parroted in her decision everything Judge Kaplan had said about me. It was a totally unfair process. She wouldn't let me testify in my defense. So it doesn't surprise me I was convicted. I mean, the good news is we now go into the appellate process, and I expect that the Second Circuit Court of Appeals will reverse this awful decision. But I also predict she will try to put me in prison on top of my 2+ years in house arrest. The maximum sentence she can give me is 6 months. And I will say that the maximum sentence ever given to a lawyer convicted of my supposed crime, a guy named Bruce Cutler, is 90 days of home confinement, and I've already served over 8 or 9 times that amount. So, she should release me and allow me to continue my human rights work. But that's not the purpose of the exercise, right? It's a corporate prosecution. It's a Chevron prosecution. It's the first corporate prosecution in U.S. history. And they're trying to criminalize me both to protect Chevron's economic interests vis-a-vis the indigenous people of Ecuador who won the judgment against them, but also to send a message of intimidation to human rights lawyers around the world, around the United States, environmental advocates, earth protectors, indigenous rights advocates, that you are not to do this work if you expect to get out alive as a professional. So, this needs to be paid attention to. It needs to be stopped. We've called on the Biden administration, Merrick Garland, the AG, to intervene. We should not have private corporate prosecutions in the United States of America or in any rule of law country. They need to stop this now, take back the prosecution, and investigate really what I think is a terribly corrupt case that's resulted in my 2-year detention.
I want to ask, because in a different way, we've been working on the Flint water crisis for many years, and I've learned that the legal system is, frankly, not really based on laws as much as, corruption, political favors, political considerations, what have you. But there's several things that are, in your case, I'm not a lawyer, but that don't really sound legal to me or plausible to me. I believe you're entitled to a jury. I believe there's attorney-client privilege, unless there's something life or death involved, where attorney and client's communications are confidential, yet that's what you're being convicted on, not handing them over. I've never heard of a judge hiring a private law firm once a federal prosecutor has declined. So could you kind of talk about, obviously, I'm sure your appeal will be based on some of these things. Aren't there a lot of major legal red flags here that show there mangling the law to persecute you?
Several. Yes, and that's exactly what's happening. They're not mangling the law. Let me be clear. This is done with the clearest of intentions by Chevron, its law firm, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, by the private prosecutor from the other Chevron law firm, Seward and Kissel, and by judges Kaplan and Preska. I mean, these are people with an agenda as far as the judges are concerned. In my 10-year experience with Kaplan, and by the way, there's a 50-page misconduct complaint filed by 200 lawyers against him because it was targeting me, which you can get on the website of the International Association of Democratic Lawyers. This didn't come out of left field. It's been going on for years and years. And I consider it a complete abuse of power. Most judges are duty bound when they get a case to look at the facts, look at the law, and make neutral decisions. I mean, Judge Kaplan got this case and decided he hated me from day one, called me all sorts of names from the bench, and reverse engineered the case to deny me a jury and rule himself based on bribed witness testimony from Chevron that I was, guilty of bribing a judge in Ecuador when it didn't happen, and his conclusions have been rejected by 28 appellate judges in Ecuador and Canada. But because I live in New York and because he's calculated that he can get away with this, and so far he has, because the appellate court has not stopped him, I'm subject to his jurisdiction. So I have to respect that, and I have to comply with that. I have no choice. But I continue to fight it, and I fully expect to prevail on appeal. We have a great appellate team. And all of these issues, the private prosecutor, the conflict of interest, given that the private prosecutor comes from a Chevron law firm, the conflict of interest with Judge Preska, Judge Kaplan himself has investments in Chevron. I mean, this is a through and through Chevron prosecution. The main witnesses against me were Chevron lawyers. Chevron, hired a law firm to help the private Chevron prosecutor convict me and put in literally millions of dollars of attorney time to help her. This is the corporatization of our federal judiciary to a degree I've never seen before. And, people need to wake up. I mean, our society has become, sort of under the thumb of an increasing corporate power. I mean, people know that. But, and they know it affects the executive branch. They know it affects the Congress. It is also deeply infecting our federal judiciary, as I'm learning. I'm not condemning the entire judiciary. There's some fabulous judges in our country, but Kaplan and Preska and their protectors here in the New York courts are, in my view, not only not doing their jobs according to their oath, but they are, in the case of Kaplan and Preska, actively undermining the rule of law as a way to help a large American oil company fend off legitimate claims from indigenous peoples in the Amazon that the company poisoned over a 25-year period. I mean, that's not the rule of law. It's not America. Frankly, I'm embarrassed as an American, as a lawyer for our country, that this is happening to me. I mean, I hate that it's happening to me. I have a wife and a 15-year-old son locked up in my house for 2 years with a black claw ankle bracelet shackled to my lower leg that I sleep with and bathe with and eat with and never comes off. It's embarrassing, okay? We have now become a country where environmental defenders and human rights lawyers can get jailed by a corporation for being successful at holding the corporation accountable for pollution. Let me tell you something, man. Global Witness and other NGOs do reports every year on all the environmental defenders around the world who get harmed because of their work. Many get assassinated, okay, all over the world. 200 people approximately die every year because of their environmental advocacy, okay? We don't want that to start happening in this country. We don't want to be on the list of countries where advocacy gets you jailed for political reasons because you challenge entrenched interests that are harming society. And unfortunately, in my particular case, that's what's happening.
And, I don't want to blow smoke up your ass, but this is the only comparison that makes sense to me. This would be the equivalent of Erin Brockovich being prosecuted for exposing, all sorts of toxins that were killing people in California.
That's a good comparison. Not that I should be compared to her, but what's happening to me, if it were to have happened to her, is the same damn thing. I mean, basically, this can't happen without the active cooperation of a judge. I want to be clear about that. A corporation cannot just walk into court and do this. There have to be judges who are so pro-corporate and so kind of ideologically inclined that they will help facilitate the process. And that's what we have here with Judge Kaplan and Judge Preska. And it's an embarrassment. I mean, again, read the misconduct complaint against Judge Kaplan, which, by the way, was submitted to the appellate court here. They have responsibility to supervise and police trial judges. Totally blew it off. Didn't even open an investigation. 50-page, fully documented, hundreds of footnotes, misconduct complaint that demonstrates quite clearly that Judge Kaplan has abused his power to target me as a way to protect Chevron for 10 years. Okay, this didn't just happen yesterday. I got convicted yesterday. But my conviction was really the culmination of a 10-year process to criminalize me and lock me up. Criminalize a lawyer for doing lawyering. Okay, that's not cool. That's not rule of law. And that's what he's been doing. And without Judge Kaplan, this never would have happened. And I think, by the way, today I called for a complete investigation of the judges, Kaplan, Preska, this whole case from the Department of Justice. And I'll ask you this, what's Merrick Garland doing? Does he want to actually be attorney general in a country where human rights lawyers get jailed in a private prosecution that his own department, which is responsible for prosecuting federal crime in this country, had nothing to do with? 6 congresspersons, including AOC, Jim McGovern, Jamie Raskin, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Rashida Tlaib, wrote him a letter a few weeks ago demanding an investigation of this case. And there was no response. And they've just buried their head in the sand. You can't deal with climate if you're the Biden administration in any kind of effective way unless you notice what's happening to me and stop this phenomenon of these pipeline companies and oil companies and mining companies targeting protesters and lawyers who are doing their jobs to try to hold them accountable for their own violations of the law, for their own pollution, and for their destruction of the planet. Step up. Merrick Garland needs to step up and stop this case now, take back the prosecution, analyze it. Okay, if I did something wrong, and I don't believe I did, I want to be prosecuted by a professional, not by a Chevron lawyer. That's crazy. I'm the only lawyer in America begging the DOJ to prosecute me. Please prosecute me. I want to deal with a professional, not someone who has financial ties to Chevron, when decisions are made about pretrial detention, about whether the charges should be dropped, about if I'm guilty, whether I should go to jail. I mean, these are decisions, and I'm not guilty, again, I don't believe I am. But these are decisions that need to be made by professionals, not by Chevron lawyers.
And I want to bring it back. To me, one of the tricks they use, talking about the government, look at Julian Assange. I mean, they have basically thrown all this shit with no evidence to basically distract from what he actually exposed, which was war crimes. His supporters talk about that, obviously, but it's kind of been lost. What exactly did he do? Because all of the corporate media and the government has basically thrown as much muddy the waters so much into, attaching him to crimes. This is similar things are going on with you. So could you just remind people that what this is, the most important thing, what this is about, is what Chevron did, and it's not the only place they've poisoned, but what did Chevron do in the Amazon? How many people died? How many people's, have become sick from what they did? Not what you did, but what they did that you and others won in court against them.
Well, what Chevron did in Ecuador was make a deliberate decision to dump billions of gallons of cancer-causing waste onto indigenous ancestral lands, with the net result that thousands of people have died of cancer and 5 indigenous nations are moving toward extinction. That's ecocide, okay? That's a crime against humanity, in my view. Chevron and those making the decision, the individuals, I think, merit criminal prosecution for this. It's horrendous. It's the worst oil-related catastrophe on the planet, one of the worst ecocides ever. It's the very definition of ecocide. It's horrendous. I mean, I can't even explain. I've been there over 200 times, visiting towns in the Amazon and villages and, indigenous territories, and the number of people who have died, you can't even count them. I mean, first of all, there is no counting mechanism. It's all anecdotal, but you just know based on the limited health data and what you hear and what people tell you when you visit villages, thousands of people, I have no doubt in my mind, have died of cancer because of Chevron's pollution. Chevron built 1,000 open air toxic waste pits, just gouged them out of the jungle floor with no lining, where they dumped all their toxic waste from the drilling process. And then they affixed pipes to the sides of these pits that ran into nearby streams. So the oil waste they deliberately ran it into drinking water sources that they knew the indigenous peoples and rural communities were relying on for their drinking water. So, people who live there are getting exposed daily, multiple times to toxins, to poison, both with the water they drink, the food they eat, the air they breathe. It's an apocalyptic nightmare. There's literally lakes of oil in the jungle that have been left there or were the result of pipeline spills that still haven't been cleaned years and years after Chevron left in 1992. And, the idea that Chevron, instead of spending all of this money to comply with the judgment and fix this problem, uses it to pay literally hundreds of lawyers to attack me and have me locked up, shows you that this is a company that I just think has a completely rotten culture. Its general counsel, Hugh Pate, its CEO, John Watson, Michael Worth, ex-CEO Watson, current CEO Worth, they should be ashamed of themselves. They really should be. I mean, and I'm calling them out. You need to pay the judgment in Ecuador and lay off attacking lawyers who legitimately bring cases to hold you accountable for your crimes, your environmental crimes, and your misconduct in places like Ecuador.
And also, I wanted to ask you, we've spoken about this before, but, I'm headed to Line 3 soon to cover the ongoing protests there. If they get away with this, and they already have to a certain degree, you've been in prison basically for 2 years under house arrest for no reason. Doesn't that kind of normalize it for other human rights attorneys to be convicted, possibly journalists who are covering these stories, but they could kind of spin it like they've been trying to do, that journalists are inciting riots, journalists are part of the protests? I mean, this is beyond a slippery slope. It's already off. It's already off the cliff. This is essentially, to me, the government at the behest of fossil fuel companies on their last stand, imprisoning lawyers and journalists.
I think that's an accurate characterization. As for Line 3, Standing Rock, look, it's already happening, okay? One piece of the playbook is to do what they're doing to me, which is to weaponize the law, to criminalize an advocate. And if he or she goes too far, they'll lock you up, jail you. I mean, who knows what more? They could even kill people, literally, in jail. So I don't know where this ends. It needs to be stopped. It's not our country. We're not a petrostate, okay? We're a democracy, at least in theory. The fossil fuel industry has way too much power in our society. I've called on our government to nationalize this industry and begin to phase it out, because we are not going to be here in 30 or 40 or 50 years, or our children won't, and our grandchildren won't, unless we save this planet. This is an industry that has a business model based on planetary destruction, and make no mistake about it. They are increasingly desperate as the world becomes more and more cognizant of this fact, as governments and regulators around the world squeeze them out of existence, and they are trying to extract every last dollar they can of profit before it ends. And, one of the things they're doing is trying to criminalize protest and go after people like me and others as a way to intimidate those who would challenge them, and as a way to continue existing for as long as they possibly can before the whole industry goes out of business. So it's part of their business model. And the sad part is many legislators, particularly at the state level, are passing laws creating stepped up punishments for normal protests at oil facilities, which is a total attack on the First Amendment. And also using the racketeering statute, the civil statute, like they used against me, against Greenpeace and individuals who are just engaged in First Amendment protected activities. And the other thing I'll say about line 3, and I think this is disgusting, but you see this a lot in the industry. Enbridge, which is building the pipeline, is actually financing local police forces in Minnesota to so-called protect their property and arrest indigenous persons who own the land that the pipeline is crossing. So when you go there, those police officers have uniforms that might be public uniforms, but their salaries, at least for that work, are being paid by a private corporation. Who do you think their loyalty is to? The U.S. Constitution or the oil pipeline company paying their wages? And that's a very dangerous trend. We saw this in Ecuador with Chevron, where the Ecuadorian army was used as a private security force by Chevron. They were paying them apart from the taxpayer dollars in Ecuador that were supporting their national military. That's wrong. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. So be careful, because this is moving in an increasingly perilous direction, in my view.
And lastly, I'll just ask, at the end of the day, I mean, I know, some progressives have wrote a letter about this, but at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of chatter out there and talk about going back to normal. Democrats obviously were, high on their high horse about Trump's abuse of the law, weaponizing the Department of Justice, for his own political purposes. We've discovered in recent months that Trump's DOJ and Bill Barr were trying to get access to journalists' emails, phone calls. So rightfully so, Democrats called that out. The media called that out. But, like, where is the Democratic Party on this? It does, if they're not going to say anything, it's harder to pressure Merrick Garland or the Attorney General. I know a couple progressives mainly wrote a letter, but shouldn't there be more from politicians, particularly progressive politicians? Because this isn't about one person, Stephen Donziger. This is just about, do we have a rule of law or a nanny state?
More people need to speak out. I mean, not just politicians. I'm talking about bar associations, lawyers. I mean, it's shocking the lack of voices I've heard in my own profession in New York, where I live. It was like hardly anyone wants to protect me because they're so scared of the judges for whom they practice. And I've gotten more support in Paris, Madrid, Ireland, Canada from lawyers than I have here in my own country. So, in electeds, I mean, Jerry Nadler, for example, is my congressman. I mean, he won't even answer my phone calls or letters. And I later found out his son works at a Chevron law firm, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher. I mean, Jerry Nadler ought to be ashamed of himself for not, and I'm going to say to Jerry, like, you have a major human rights problem in your own district. And you haven't even said word one about the lawyer who's being locked up. That's not good, and look, luckily Jim McGovern and Jamie Raskin and AOC and Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush have shown great courage and sticking up for me. But we need more voices. I mean, no one in the Senate has said anything publicly. And, this is, again, a major human rights problem on U.S. soil that threatens our democracy, free speech throughout our society. And, almost nobody in the Congress is really speaking up in a forceful way about it.
And I should also add, we've addressed this, but bottom line, New York Times is the biggest media outlet in the world, as far as I know. I think that's a 20-minute walk or something from where you live. They have not covered it, and there's conflicts of interest with their lawyers being tied to the firm that is prosecuting you. So as I'm experiencing right now with our Flint bombshell, if the media is going to cover up, keyword cover up, I mean, complete violations. You want to talk about Trump being outside the norm of society. If they're going to cover up complete assault on the legal system, democracies are known to have a free and fair press that actually operate as press. Your thoughts on the Times and the media, to me, covering this up, Stephen?
Well, the Times, ironically, on Sunday, they had a front page story on their Chevron's pollution in Nigeria, the Nigerian Delta, that focused on the story of one leaking pipe that was wreaking havoc in a small community. And it was a fine story, but it didn't connect anything up to a larger ecosystem problem in Nigeria, and of course completely ignored the much larger problem of Chevron's ecocide in the Ecuadorian Amazon. So the New York Times idea of doing a story on some environmental problem is to focus on one leaking pipe and some women in a village who took on Chevron to fix this one pipe. But what about all the pipes? What about the 1,000 waste pits in the Amazon that Chevron left? Where's that story? Where's the story on ecocide? Where's the story on the lawyers being locked up in the United States? So I find it kind of disappointing, to say the least, that Dean Baquet, who's the executive editor of the Times, hasn't ordered a reporter to come write a story on a U.S. lawyer who, by the way, graduated with Barack Obama and Neil Gorsuch in the same law class at Harvard, 1991. They were my classmates. Okay. Barack became president, Neil became a Supreme Court justice, and I went down to Ecuador to try to help people, and I'm being locked up. Where's that story? I mean, even if you don't like me, isn't that a little bit newsworthy? That is a newsworthy story, and I guarantee the New York Times readership would love a fair and balanced story about my experience, being locked up for 2 years, but they won't cover it. And, then you go, well, why? I mean, Chevron is a major, major advertiser. And we know that one of Chevron's lead lawyers that's attacking me, Ted Boutros, is the New York Times lawyer on First Amendment issues. In other words, the same Chevron law firm, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, that has literally billed $1 billion over the last 10 years, deployed hundreds of lawyers to go after me and demonize me and try to criminalize me. That same practice group represents the New York Times. That's a total conflict of interest. I'm ashamed of the New York Times. And believe me, I've been a religious reader of the Times my entire adult life. I still subscribe. But man, that's just unbelievable. And it's not just the Times, man. It's all the networks. CNN, they've all contacted me. NBC, MSNBC. ABC wrote a story and it got killed. I mean, they've all tried to get into the story at the repertorial level, and somewhere upstairs, probably in the business side, the legal side, all the stories just get killed. But in the meantime, the independent media, Gizmodo and Democracy Now! And you and Jordan, your great work, so many others, The Nation, The Intercept, Chris Hedges. I mean, we've gotten some fabulous coverage from the independent media, but the corporate media has totally ignored the story.
How could people help? Honestly, I would think all this is racking up serious bills. How could people support you as you file the appeal?
Well, go to my website, donzigerdefense.com, and you have a couple options. One is we're raising money to pay our legal fees. They're enormous given the monster we're facing. So the only way we can sustain this effort is through a high volume of, mostly modest donations. So if you can give, please go to the website, Donziger Defense. Even if you can't, go anyway. Sign up, join our campaign, and you'll get regular case updates. We're building a movement to hold Chevron accountable on behalf of indigenous peoples in Ecuador. We're also building a model to sustain human rights work through a high volume of low donations, modest donations from around the world. And it's really fabulous. And we've had literally thousands of people have joined the cause. But we need help constantly. I mean, my appeal is going to be very expensive, but we think we have a great chance. We think it could end up in the U.S. Supreme Court because of the unusual nature of this issue involving the private Chevron prosecutor. So we need to put our best foot forward, and we need money to do that. By the way, we're trying to raise $200,000 to hire a very specialized law firm for the appeal. We're halfway toward our goal. So we got to push this and make sure we get this team in. Again, if you can help, go to donzigerdefense.com. If you can't give, join us anyway. Obviously, it's about solidarity first and foremost, and just keep supporting us. It allows me personally and my family, my wife and son, as well as many of the leaders down in Ecuador, to sort of sustain ourselves as we battle on in year 28 of this incredible epic case.
Thank you, Stephen. Sorry you're still going through this, but we'll stay on the story.
And thank you for your solid journalism and your work in Flint and elsewhere. It's so important. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So that was Stephen Donziger, the human rights attorney who, frankly, his human rights are being stomped on. I want to read some super chats before we get to a few other things. Jim Bissett, $5. Will this go to SCOTUS? As Stephen just said, it's possible. It is possible. So thank you for the $5. Das Bosch Fleisch, 549 euros. If humanity survives this century, I wonder what history will what history books will say about the United Corporations of America. Ooh, I love that you're borrowing my phrasing. The history books will probably be written by the corporations, unfortunately. That's my sad answer. Lara Hamilton, 1999. Thanks for covering this. Thank you for the support. Robin Bennett, $10. Thanks, Robin. Lara Hamilton, $2.99. Oil companies are criminals and murderous bullies. You're reaching to the choir. Henry, $5. Name the judge that found you guilty. That would be Judge Loretta Prescott. Judge Loretta. Let me make sure I have the name right. Hold on. Twitter. Judge Loretta Preska. Preska. Presk. So that's Judge Loretta Preska. Presk. And, I think Stephen was trying to be diplomatic. I don't have to be diplomatic. We need a little bit more than a letter from electeds, particularly progressives, from AOC to the rest. Because again, like Julian Assange, this is not about one particular lawyer. This is about, literally criminalizing law, activism, going after oil companies. That's what this is. This is about criminalizing any sort of prosecution or opposition, whether it's protest, a legal case against fossil fuel companies. And that would be fascism, not democracy. That would be fascism. So that's very, very important. So definitely, everybody has a certain amount of money and budget. We obviously ask you for support. If you got a couple bucks, definitely throw it towards Stephen. We were live earlier, Jen and I. So since we've been live, a couple things going on that I wanted to address. First and foremost, it might seem like nothing, but anything we could get right now on our Flint, Flint bombshell story, the story that we broke last week. Any progress is progress, even if it's small. So, but after our last live stream, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, if you could show that, Colin, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib tweeted out our story and commented on the story, saying 30,000 plus Flint school children were exposed to a neurotoxin known to have detrimental effects on children's developing brains and nervous systems, and Snyder covered it up. These children and their families are still waiting for justice. And under that, she included, the original tweet from me with our story. I really, really appreciate that from Rashida Tlaib. It might not sound like much, a tweet, but honestly, at this point, it's very clear that, and before you start getting at it, damn, that's so nice, she tweeted it. Listen, would I have loved her to tweet out, Congress should immediately subpoena Rick Snyder, the former governor, to be brought back in before us? Yeah, I would have loved that. But at the end of the day, we cannot, if progressives do things that are good, even if it's not going all the way, we can't just look at it like nihilists. We have to be appreciative of that, even if it doesn't seem like enough. So how this works, now we have Congressman Ro Khanna, who has tweeted something out. Now we have Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who has tweeted something out. Now we have Erin Brockovich, who has tweeted something out. Actor Mark Ruffalo, who has tweeted things out. Susan Sarandon, who has tweeted things out. Marianne Williamson, who has tweeted things out. I could take all of this, which I already have, and now I'm sending it to Congressman Cori Bush, Congressman Jamal Bowman, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley. Your compadres over at Pramila Jayapal, your compadres over here are speaking out about one of the biggest government cover-ups of this century. If we get enough politicians to speak out, even if it's on Twitter for now, then we have more of a pressure campaign. How is the media ignoring all of these politicians, all of these celebrities, and most importantly, the story? So at the end of the day, listen, don't poo-poo when people do things that we're asking them to do. Like, would it be great if she sent out a tweet cussing and cursing? Yes, but we can't just rant. We can't just snap our fingers or rant things into existence. So it's a start. It's a start. And by the way, I've been very disheartened over the last few days because we broke a major story. It's government corruption. People have died. It's been covered up for many years. The Democratic president, the democratically controlled House Oversight Committee, they're not doing anything. I literally reached out to the democratically controlled House Oversight Committee, which was chaired by Elijah Cummings before he died, and said, our story in January, that reporting shows Governor Snyder likely perjured himself during testimony in front of you. This report that we just broke last week also shows he likely perjured himself. You going to do anything? Silence of the lambs. They told me their expert was out of town and they couldn't get back to me. They need an expert to respond to perjury. And I reached back out today. Crickets. Nothing. Then you have, forget the squad for a second, you have Michigan Congressman, Flint's Congressman, Dan Kildee. Crickets. And Dan Kildee hasn't said a damn word about other corruption that we've broken, because from what I've gathered, Dan Kildee is corrupt himself. You have Michigan Senator Debbie Stabenow. Crickets. The senator from Michigan, Debbie Stabenow. Michigan Senator Gary Peters. Stabenow, Peters, Democrats. Kildee, Democrats. Michigan Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, a Democrat. Michigan, these are all Michigan people. Crickets. They're not living in a cave. They get stories in their press alerts every day about Michigan news. This story was in the Intercept and the Detroit Metro Times last week about Governor Snyder's top officials, their phones being erased, their messages being erased, Governor Snyder himself refusing to hand over key documents to criminal prosecutors. All these Michigan representatives are silent, other than Rashida Tlaib. I mean, how could that be? How could you represent Michigan as a congressperson, a senator, if you're not going to speak out about the biggest government cover-up, I think, this century, but particularly in your state? By the way, while the governor is headed to trial right now, Governor Snyder is headed to trial for misdemeanors, and these representatives are silent? By the way, Rashida Tlaib just spoke out. She's a Michigan congresswoman. You would think the Detroit Free Press, who's been burying this story and refuses to cover it, maybe now they would say something because their politicians are speaking out on it. How about the Detroit News? How about the Flint Journal? Crickets. And this isn't journalists being lazy. This isn't journalists being disconnected. These are journalists who knowingly know the story. They've seen the story. The Detroit Free Press responded to me. They know the story's out there. They've read it. This is them knowingly covering it up. How is that possible? You want to talk about the free press and Donald Trump is attacking the free press? Yeah, he was. You know who else is attacking the free press? The corrupt corporate press. That's who's attacking the free press. It is a damn outrage that almost a week later, the people of Flint don't even know about this story because their local media won't cover it. Their state media won't cover it. How are they supposed to know? They're not reading the Intercept all day. They're not reading Detroit Metro Times all day. Most of these people, if they even pay attention to news, turn on their local news channels at night, or CNN from time to time, or MSNBC from time to time. It's outrageous. How could you have change in a country? How could you activate people to do something if the masses, the information is being hidden from them? I mean, this is really why we created status quo in the first place. But this is much deeper than countering the corporate media propaganda. In this case, the corporate media isn't saying anything. They're covering up. And by the way, not one fact has ever been disputed in any of our Flint reporting. Not with Vice, not with the Detroit Metro Times, not with the Intercept, not on our own. It's never been disputed. We always tell you things are delayed. Sorry, the story is taking so long. It's because we've had to be meticulous. This is a cover-up of the government and now the media. So you want to know something? It might not be the very tweet I wanted. I appreciate Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib speaking out. I appreciate Congressman Ro Khanna speaking out. Frankly, I'm just going to say it. Michael Moore retweeting the story is not enough. He retweeted the story. That's not enough. I appreciate Michael Moore that he had me on his podcast in January after we broke the first story Intercept, but that's not enough. I mean, if Michael Moore raises hell, the media has to cover it. That's just the way things are. If Michael Moore raises hell on this, it will get attention. I know that, the hearings on January 6th are going on, and CNN and MSNBC are glued to the wall about this. Unfortunately, media pays attention to major celebrity, and in this case, Michael Moore should be speaking out on this, not just retweeting it, but should be speaking out on this. He's been calling for Snyder to be convicted for years. Well, we just broke the full details of the cover-up, which, by all accounts, the governor was involved in, and Michael Moore's retweeting it. I could go down the list. I really could go down the list. This is outrageous. It is, honestly, as journalists, all we could do as journalists is build sources, dig for where the bodies are, take risks, because I've taken quite a few risks, so has Jen, fight to get the story out. That's really all we could do. It's infuriating to me that we do all those things. We get the story out there. We break the story. It's completely factual. It's damning. To me, it's on par with Watergate. If there's no president involved with Watergate, this is bigger. You're talking a multi-layer state government cover-up that killed people, and people are still slowly dying as a result of that toxic water. And you can't get the media to cover it in a free country, a democratic country? Well, something's wrong there. Something's wrong there. So thank you to Rashida Tlaib. I'm calling for Cori Bush to speak out now, AOC to speak out now, Jamal Bowman, Pramila Jayapal, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley. If Elizabeth Warren still wants to pretend she's progressive, this isn't about calling them frauds, sellouts, cowards, all this thing. This is saying, I know AOC has cited what happened in Flint as one of the reasons she ran for Congress. She was personally affected by it. Not affected, but it stood out to her, I guess. So I am kindly but directly saying, we're asking you to tweet. We're asking you to speak out. We're asking you possibly to call for Governor Snyder to be subpoenaed back in front of Congress. I don't think that's biased of me to say. Our reporting indicates the former governor of Michigan perjured himself in front of Congress and was part of a criminal cover-up. That's not my opinion. That's what the reporting shows. So we need Congress to act. We need the media to act. And I don't care if I have to keep tweeting about this and emailing them for the next 7 months. I'm not going to stop. And frankly, getting Tlaib to tweet today was because I reached out multiple times and followed up. And I've been direct messaging the story on Twitter to everybody and their mother. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that you do not see. It's not just we're live and that's it. So thank you to Rashida Tlaib. Want to shout out some more super chats. Thank you, Lara Hamilton. The cover-ups are horrible. Keep it up, Status Coup. Thank you. Welcome new Status Coup YouTube member, one Charlatan. Thank you for joining us. Lara Hamilton, I think I just read that one. $9.99. The cover-ups are horrible. Keep it up, Status Coup. And you know what? While I'm at it, where is the independent media? Seriously, where is the independent media? Like, am I in the Twilight Zone? I was on the Hill earlier. Jen and I were on the Hill. We appreciate them having us on. I was on with Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi last week, Jen and I. I went on with RT. You have to depend on a Russian network to cover these stories. I went on with them earlier. I went on an independent radio station earlier. I went on with Jen Perlman last night, who has a YouTube channel you should check out. She ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida. Crystal, on Breaking Points, mentioned this story for, a little bit. Would love to go on about the story, but she mentioned it at least. That's it. I mean, I know that independent media is very focused on a lot of other things right now, which namely, just online warfare. But Jesus Christ, if the independent media isn't going to cover these stories, pick up these stories that are being done by independent media, oh my God, we're bitching all day long about corporate media, rightfully so, but we're not even going to elevate the independent media. I'm not just talking about us. I would say the same thing if Democracy Now! Broke this, or we broke it for The Intercept, or, I don't know, Common Dreams, or Unicorn Riot. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, please, when journalists expose deadly government cover-ups, that has to rise up on your story list. That has to be equally as important as covering other things. I'm not asking for a half-hour show on it. I'm not asking, you don't even have to have us on. If you don't want to have guests, just cover it. I know Mike from the Humanist Report told me he's going to be covering it. I'd love to see Kyle from Secular Talk, who's done some coverage in recent weeks about our stuff. It'd be great if Jimmy did stuff. It would be great, across the board. Not to help status quo, but to get the story out, because there's a whole lot of people, even online and independent viewers, who don't consume corporate media that do not know about the story either. So we're not beyond criticism. You could call us out if we're not covering something you think. The Guardian would be lovely, right? I've reached out to The Guardian many times. They don't respond. They don't respond. I forgot Tom Hartman, who's, a little bit more centrist than I am, but he had me on about this story. So, we need our allies here. I know there's a lot of tribalism going down, and there's a lot of, fighting, and everybody's a fraud. Hell, I know they don't like me. I don't particularly like them, but how about the Young Turks? They're the ones who originally invested in me to go to Flint. They spent a lot of money so that I could go to Flint and start this reporting. I know they haven't done anything since on Flint, but can you cover it? You don't need to mention my name if you don't want to. Just say The Intercept. It's just unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable to me. I mean, as a journalist, and this is not about us feeling so self-important or superior to other channels that don't report in the field. Not at all. I think these channels are doing great work. You don't have to go out and report in the field to do things or be important. I am telling you, all we're asking for is you to elevate. We're putting a face to the corruption you all are commenting on all the time. We're actually telling you in detail, showing you in detail how the corruption has worked, how a massive government cover-up happened. As humbly as I could say, we have stayed on a story that no one has covered for 6 years. Rachel Maddow, who originally covered it and got an award for it, hasn't done shit for years. She's been busy, stoking the new Cold War. I sent it to Rachel Maddow. I sent it to her executive producer. Nothing. Nothing. I mean, how about Democracy Now! I've sent it to them. I've sent other stories to them. I don't know if they don't like me. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Democracy Now! Amy Goodman went to Flint many years ago. I can't get them to respond to me. I mean, the story's gotten a lot of traction online. Besides Congressman Ro Khanna, besides Rashida Tlaib, you got Erin Brockovich is saying this is the biggest cover-up you'll ever read. She tweeted that. Susan Sarandon tweeted about it, saying, why did Snyder only get charged with a misdemeanor based on this information? Actor Mark Ruffalo tweeted about it. Not retweeted, tweeted about it. Marianne Williamson, not even in office, tweeted about it. I'm at a loss. I'm really at a loss. I'm not going to stop. We're not going to stop. But I'm really at a loss. I talked about earlier, I'm at a loss because it doesn't really seem like a growing level of progressives have any strategy other than hoping they could rant and rave progress into existence. And just they think that going scorched earth and calling everybody a sellout, fraud, coward, all this is the way to success and the way to achieving things. I don't need to relitigate that. People know what I think about that. So I'm at a loss about that. And I'm at a loss about this because honestly, as a journalist, I genuinely do not know. and I think I'm speaking for Jen too, I do not know what more I could do. Like you could, what do they say? You could bring the baby to the water. They got to drink it. Like we are providing the information. We are providing the evidence. And by the way, just to be clear, because I think people get lost in this, this is not just a story about Flint, Michigan, okay? It's not just a story about Flint's water. That is the predominant focus, obviously. I mean, it happened to them. But this is about, do we live in a country or do we live in a multi-trillion-dollar corporate conglomerate that, whether intentionally or whether unintentionally or intentionally, makes its citizens sick, covers it up as they're being poisoned, then covers it up after, then gets the media to cover it up while leaving all the citizens to slowly die. Because that could happen to you. It might not be water. It might be fracking. It might be mining. It might be other chemicals in the water. It might be poor air quality. It might be, name your pick of things that are killing people because of corporations. So I don't want you to think of Flint as some far, far city away from you that is not relevant to your life. This is all relevant because I got news for you. If there is no actual accountability, I don't know if there will ever be justice because people died and people are sick. But if there is no actual accountability here, why should your mayor think twice? Why would your governor think twice about privatizing water or other things, about cutting costs, about, whatever. This poor city, this poor black city, this poor brown city, this poor white city. Just, don't worry about the water quality. We'll just take a chance here. So that's Flint, and we're going to stay on it. Tomorrow is a week since we broke it. So, ain't over till it's over, but it is progress that more people are tweeting about it. I would love more than tweeting, but we can't be so narrow-minded that we forget when good things actually are happening. It's good that she tweeted it. It's good that Ro Khanna tweeted it. Now we got to get other people to speak out about it and then focus. I also want to address this is more information is coming about this. So Nina Turner, Jen read the story earlier. There are blatant financial conflicts and ethical conflicts that Nina Turner's opponent, Chantel Brown, is being exposed under. That was in Newsweek, written by Walker Bragman and Andrew Perez, who are with David Sirota's reporting group, The Daily Poster. They do good work. So they basically just broke that conflict. Chantel Brown, if elected, would be facing potentially criminal charges and ethics charges over financial impropriety. Of course, this is not being covered on CNN or MSNBC. Politico, who's done a bunch of hit jobs on Nina Turner, they're not going to cover that. The New York Times, who in my view did some hit pieces on Nina Turner, they're not going to cover that. But we should also say, right now, Nina Turner is doing what Bernie Sanders refused to do, what I called for Bernie Sanders to do during 2 campaigns, what a lot of you were howling at the wind for Bernie Sanders to do. Take off the goddamn gloves. And this is why I take issue with people saying Nina's a sellout. She's going to go along to get along. She's showing you right now she is willing to fight. Colin, if you could put up the press release. So Nina Turner has already been on the air with negative ads against Chantel Brown, pointing out that Chantel Brown is smearing her, pointing out that Chantel Brown has really shady relationships with corporate Democrats. And now, as Chantel Brown has no accomplishments, like she's not holding back. Now, tomorrow they're holding a press conference, Nina Turner's campaign, along with other elected officials from Cleveland, other faith leaders and activists. They're talking about it as discuss the state of the race. But in the press release, they say very clearly, Nina Turner and other guests will discuss the important issues facing the district, the destructive roles of unlimited corporate and dark money spending in the race and the Republicans' bankrolling of Chantal Brown's campaign. Boom, boom, boom. Take off the gloves. Don't let the establishment come in. Don't let James Clyburn come in. Don't let Third Way, the quote, centrist think tank, who's really a Wall Street funded think tank, who just dropped $250,000 into this race days before it to take down Nina Turner. $250,000. This centrist think tank just dropped in against Nina Turner. This is after the Democratic Majority for Israel super PAC. Apparently, there's major issues that involve Israel in Cleveland and Akron. They dropped in over $1 million so far against her, and she is running negative ads on Chantal Brown, not based on innuendo, not based on bullshit, based on facts, based on the fact that Chantal Brown has, questionable financial relationships, based on the fact that she is being bankrolled by Republicans, and now she's going to hold a press conference attacking her too. And I say, please do more of this. Not just Nina Turner, all progressives. This fairy tale, this delusion, and Bernie meant well, but he was deluding himself. This delusion that we're just going to run on the issues, we're going to run a positive campaign, we're not going to get down in the mud. I said it for years. You cannot bring a spoon to a political knife fight. You cannot bring a spoon to a political knife fight. You cannot bring a spoon to a political gunfight. To be clear, YouTube, this is all figurative, not real ones. You have to fight fire with fire. And she is right now getting down in the dirt, going on air with negative attacks that are based in facts, not like personal attacks, negative attacks based on her opponent's record, based on her opponent's apparent shady financial connections that enriched her and her family. This is how you win. This is how you win. Yes, run on the issues. Nina Turner has been running ads on Medicare for All. She just held a rally with AOC that a lot of people are upset about, and they were talking about Medicare for All. So she is running on issues, but she's also fighting back. And more progressives need to learn this, including the squad. Just because I'm saying you're not accomplishing anything by ranting and raving that they're frauds, sellouts, and cowards, it's good for the internet, it's good entertainment, it's good for clicks, doesn't actually achieve anything, doesn't mean we shouldn't pressure them to fight. And I think personally, I don't know, I think Nina Turner has a very good shot to win. I think if she wins against unprecedented attacks in a local election, AOC didn't even get this many attacks because they just took it for granted that Joe Crowley was going to beat her. Nina Turner has been getting attacked for months, financially, media. So if she could win, it's because she mixed her campaign with positive issues and a clear message, but also went negative when she had to, went on offense when she had to, did not call her opponent my friend Joe Biden, went after her opponent. That's how you win, not just in politics, in life. I'm not saying go after them based on, smears or push out false information. You don't have to. All of these corporate Democratic establishment opponents generally have some form of corruption in their closet. So I think what she's doing is right. I think the people attacking her because she's not ranting and raving to your liking, if you spent as much time trying to get her elected, we might actually achieve anything. And to be clear, this is not standing for Nina Turner. If she gets in there and does nothing, if she gets in there and folds like a cheap tent, then criticize her, pressure her, shame her. But, all these people that are preemptively, she's running as a Democrat, done. She's not attacking Joe Biden or the Democratic Party enough on the campaign trail, she's done. At a certain point, we have to just move on from those people. I'm not trying to be condescending, but if they're going to go in their direction, and they're, in my view, cult, and people who actually want to achieve things need to focus on actual winning and achieving things. And it's not, I'm not attacking people. I'm just telling you, we've already relitigated this and said this. You can't operate that way and win anything. And by the way, we do need to make them fear you. But the way to make them fear you is just not to rant and rave at them all day long, call them sellouts, frauds, cowards. It's to pressure them. It's economic boycotts. It's, if they're not going to do what you say, primarying them. It's not like hashtags fraud squad. That doesn't do it. That makes them laugh at you and ignore you. Yeah, I have seen that there's going to be a day of general strike on October 15th. I think that's a great start, but it sounds to me similar to like we're protesting Amazon for the first day of the month. I hope attached with that general strike on October 15th is a plan for longer lasting general strike, but you got to start. You got to crawl before you could walk. So just that general strike on October 15th, positive step. I really hope there's a plan with it to do more systemic and organized general strikes across the country. It doesn't have to right off the bat be one whole general strike. That's hard to pull off. Start with major, corporations, whether it be Amazon, Walmart, big corporate banking, fast food. So I think that's positive. But let me tell you something. I think people are not, it is positive when progressives that are picking up the baton from, Bernie, who frankly, I think ran a weak campaign in a lot of ways and was politically naive. It is positive when they're not making the same exact, mistakes that Bernie did, and Nina Turner is not. Osito, status quo. So when Nina gets in and does nothing to fight, just like the squad, then what? So Osito, can I ask you a question? Genuinely. Are you a psychic? Do you have a crystal ball? Or are you just a nihilist? I'm asking you generally. Do you know something we don't know? I know you're angry. I know you're disappointed. I know you're frustrated. Do you know that Nina Turner is going to get elected and fold like a cheap tent? Do you know that? Do you think that because why? Based on her track record of fighting the establishment? Or are you just lumping her in with the squad because it makes you feel good? All these people that just preemptively are canceling people for no reason. No reason. So, I mean, it's literally, you're all on like a kamikaze mission to self-sabotage yourself. Arguably, they're being realistic based on recent history. Nobody knows the future. Based on what recent history? Based on what recent history? You're just automatically lumping in Nina Turner, who, by the way, has been in politics longer than most of the squad, by the way, is older than most of the squad, by the way, in 2015, reversed her endorsement from Hillary Clinton and went to Bernie Sanders, who at that time didn't even have an organized campaign, was not really surging at that time. She took a big risk then, who, by the way, during the Democratic National Convention in 2016, went scorched earth and exposed that the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign was basically torturing Bernie delegates there. Like, what are you basing this on? Because AOC and the squad and Bernie are disappointing you right now? Nina Turner is automatically a fraud and she's just going to be another one? This is the nihilism that is creeping in. This is the extreme cynicism. Basic cynicism is one thing. The extreme cynicism. If it is all for nothing, folks, I'm talking to you folks. If it is all for nothing, if it doesn't matter, if they're all corrupt, if they're all full of shit, if they're all going to say one thing and get in there and not do it, then why are you still watching? Why are you still even involved? I'm asking you. People are losing hope, I think. I understand. But the answer to feeling down, the answer to losing hope, the answer to being frustrated, the answer to being cynical is not to unilaterally cancel the whole world. It's like depression and anxiety, right? And I have suffered with depression, okay? I was hospitalized many years ago with severe depression and thoughts of suicide. Fortunately, I never had a plan or anything like that. But in 2015, I was hospitalized. I don't I don't hide it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's plenty of people like that. And, you know, it's very, very difficult when you're in a state of depression, which is not a choice. It's a clinical illness. It's very, very difficult to get out of bed, right? It's very, very difficult to keep moving, because what depression is, and to a certain extent anxiety, it's a clinical disease, and it's a trick of the mind that makes you think how you're feeling now is permanent. How you're feeling now is permanent. It's never going to change. I recently switched medications and I fell into a depression because I switched medications and I wasn't on a medication for several weeks. And I felt it was never going to change. I felt I'm permanently in this. And that is a trick of the mind. This is another thing. Harlan, better to prepare now for disappointment, though, Jordan. Inevitable and unavoidable. Harlan, you just made my point. Then why are you watching, Harlan? Why are you involved? Why do you care? If it's all for nothing, Harlan, why are you watching? I'm not telling you not to watch. I'm saying, why are you watching? Why do you still pay attention to politics if it is all for nothing? Nobody seems to have an answer. When I challenge people who are just scorched earth, they're all frauds, they're all cowards, Jordan, they're all going to screw us, they don't have an answer. They don't have a strategy either. It's all, you're punching down, you're an access journalist, you're a sellout, you're this, you're that. No substantive answer because they don't have one. I mean, Jesus, if you've gotten to the point where you truly believe you are better off, and the fight for Medicare for all is better off with Nina Turner out of Congress than in Congress, then I can't get through to you. I can't. That doesn't mean, like, if you want to be involved with building a third party, this isn't about propping up the Democratic Party. I don't care. I'm not Dem enter, Dem exit. I'm a journalist. It's not for me. I don't have to, it's not my job to prop up the movement for a People's Party or cheer for it. It's not my job to prop up the Democratic Party. It's my job to report on corruption. And the Democratic Party gives me plenty to work with. So does the Republican Party. But I just got to say, I mean, if a lot of you basically, it's not the same thing as depression, but a lot of you are feeling right now that everything is permanently hopeless. And a lot of you, frankly, sorry to, feed you your green beans and vegetables. A lot of you had unrealistic expectations because of Bernie's revolution. Okay? I don't think Bernie lied to anyone. But the truth is, this country, to a certain degree, has always been corrupt. But where we are right now, which is the United Corporations of America, you see it behind me, this corrupt system that is suffocated, that has been swallowed by money, that has been swallowed by corporations, it was not built overnight. And this belief that we were going to basically overthrow it in a couple years if we just elected Bernie as president, if we just elected certain politicians as congresspeople, it was going to get us Medicare for all, it was going to get us a Green New Deal, it was going to get us a $15 minimum wage, it was going to get us all these things, was unrealistic. That is not the same thing as accepting incrementalism. I am not talking about incrementalism. But I think so many people, because in the most recent round, I mean, Bernie, if you're talking like baseball, was like, it seemed like he was rounding third base, right? He won all the early primaries. He kicked ass in Nevada. It looked like he was about to win the nomination, and we all think he would have crushed Trump. So when you're so close, and then it's all ripped away from you, and you have this right-wing warmonger as president now, and we're back to basically the Obama era, only worse in my view. Yeah, that's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly disheartening. It's incredibly infuriating. And we don't, like, as Susan Sarandon said yesterday at the rally we covered outside AOC's office, we don't have time for a long-term strategy. The planet's on fire. People are dying without health care. Workers are dying. We don't have time for a long-term strategy. The question is, how do you get these things to pass quicker? How do we get these things to pass quicker? How do you pressure the politicians to start fighting? They tweet a lot. They said they were going to fight, but how do you actually pressure them to do what you want? And if they're not going to do what you want, how do you get politicians that will? These are all important questions. And these are issues of strategy. So for the people, and I know you don't mean anything bad, I'm just telling you kind of as somebody who cares about this movement and cares about you, I'm trying to take you kind of off that ledge for a minute and show you it is not all hopeless. It is not all hopeless. If it was all hopeless, I would not do and I would not work as hard as I do, neither would Jen, to try and break these stories if I thought it was all hopeless. I was told by several people I trust that the only reason Governor Rick Snyder was charged with anything was because of our reporting for Vice and The Intercept. He was only charged with a misdemeanor, but I'm talking anything charged at all was because of our reporting. I've had Native Americans come up to me. If you weren't at Standing Rock, they would have started shooting real bullets. Okay? Bernie, who everybody has criticized, and for good reason, he just played hardball. He said, I'm not going to vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill if there's not an attached reconciliation bill. I'm not going to vote for a bipartisan deal if there's not a very high dollar reconciliation bill. He said, I'm not taking anything less than $6 trillion. He got the Democratic Party to $3.5 trillion. We have nihilists saying that's nothing. It's the biggest social spending package since the New Deal. These are facts. And that's because Bernie played hardball that everybody was criticizing him for not doing. Somebody just asked, what's your plan, Jordan? Well, I've given it earlier today. I'm happy to give it again today. I could promise you something. If you think ranting, raving, and calling all these people sellouts, frauds, cowards, feckless, this, that, and the other thing is going to change anything, enjoy your political island, living on your political island with fellow cultists. It's not going to change a damn thing. And by the way, sorry, it's not making them fear you. Ranting and raving does not make them fear you. It just doesn't. Martin Luther King Jr. was not ranting and raving at Lyndon B. Johnson. He was strategically organizing, fighting, strategically. Okay? My strategy would be, and I'm a journalist, I'm not an organizer. My strategy, first and foremost, and anyone that's not starting with this is wrong. Words and hashtags are not going to convince politicians to do anything. You know what will? If you hit their donors in the wallet. Their donors run the country. That's what that flag means. Biden doesn't make the decisions. The donors make the decisions. The donors set the limits of what they can and cannot do. Okay? So you have to economically affect corporate America, not with one-day strikes, but with systemic economic boycott. Attached to that economic boycott must be widespread mutual aid. You cannot boycott Amazon and forget Amazon workers who need to feed their families. You need a pot of mutual aid for those Amazon workers. If you have a pot of mutual aid for those Amazon workers, there's a lot more chance those Amazon workers are going to join you. Same thing goes for fast food. Same thing goes for corporate banking. Same thing goes for Walmart. Keep going. Electoral politics only can do so much. And I think we all thought, just get Bernie in there, the ocean will clear. Remember, half of us got hoodwinked by Obama and his wonderful words about healing the ocean and a new kind of politics. We need, and I don't think it's realistic to start with a general strike across the country. It's too difficult to snap your fingers. It needs to start. Let's boycott one major company. I say start with Amazon. And pressure and shame upper limousine liberals to do the same. I don't think the smart strategy is to harass them as they're outside eating dinner to stop using Amazon. You know, it's not that it's not righteous. It's not that we should not make people uncomfortable. You have to think about what's going to convince them to do something. The goal should be winning, not being pure. Not ranting and raving together and feeling good online together. It should be achieving things. Progressive means progress. So I would start with an economic boycott. I'd start, if you can, with Amazon, McDonald's, what have you. if you affect even their quarterly profits by a little bit, guess what? Guess what? Their lobbyists are going to call up the politicians and they're going to say, you have to concede something. Something needs to be done. Some policy needs to change. You get short-term improvement. You get whatever the improvement is, and then you double down because you've already seen, oh, if we do this, it works. Look, Frito-Lay workers just striked in Topeka, Kansas. All they got was 1 day off a week. They should have 2 days off a week. All they got was an end to suicide schedules, what they call suicide schedules, suicide shifts, which are working all day and then only having like 7 or 8 hours off before you come back. But they achieved something by striking, and there was mutual aid involved. Why can't the next group? I'm going tomorrow. We're going to be covering it exclusively on Rockfin tomorrow morning. Join us as a Rockfin subscriber to watch it tomorrow morning. We're going to be covering the coal miners from Alabama are striking outside BlackRock in New York City. There's expected to be about 700 to 1,000 people outside BlackRock tomorrow. By the way, they're coming from Alabama. They've been striking for 4 months. Okay? So my strategy would not exclusively be ranting and raving at the squad, calling them Lucifer. It would be starting with economic boycotts. With those economic boycotts, I would be protesting, like we saw yesterday, outside AOC's office, outside Rashida Tlaib's office, outside Ilhan Omar's office, outside Ayanna Pressley's office, outside Ro Khanna's office. I'm not saying don't pressure them. I'm not saying don't shame them. I thought the protest we covered yesterday was great. They weren't ranting and raving that they're all frauds, sellouts, and cowards. They were saying, Susan Sarandon was saying, we want to follow you. We want to believe in you. This is, we're ready to fight for you, but you need to fight for us. Susan Sarandon said, we need to believe that you're still representing us. Why can't more of that be done? It actually has the effect of shaming them and pressuring them without villainizing them. And then you'll get people, Jordan, you're tone policing and nothing ever changes with a polite demand. You're not politely asking for things. You're outside their office. You are shaming them. You are exposing them. You are demanding they do things and fight. You're just not, at the same time, calling them Lucifer. What? I don't get why this is so complicated. I really don't. You know, it's like, do you get your child to do something by calling them names? I mean, it's just, do you get your parents to change their views on things by attacking them? It just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So that's it. That's it. Again, as a reminder, tomorrow morning, we will be live from New York City. I think it starts around 9 a.m. Eastern, so that's 6 a.m. Pacific, so kind of early for the West Coast, exclusively on Rockfin. Right now, we're already past 70 paid subscribers on Rockfin. We've only done 3 shows on Rockfin exclusively. So we need you to sign up for Rockfin if you can. If you can't, totally understand. If you can, $9.99 a month. You get to get our premium show once a week. You get other premium shows. I think Graham Elwood is there as a premium show. Lee Camp has a premium show. Other folks have premium shows. Rockfin is great. There's no censorship. You could cover things a lot more in depth without fear of it being taken down, censored. And for us personally, if we get to 100 paid subscribers, the guaranteed money that we're getting from Rockfin, because we do have a basic guarantee doing the weekly exclusive, it goes up considerably if we get to 100 subscribers. So we totally understand if you can't, if you're already a Status Coup member, which is our top preference, statuscoup.com/join. But if we don't want you to cancel your membership and go to Rockfin. But if you are in the situation where you do have that extra $9.99 a month, this will help us raise consistent money to get out in the field. If you didn't see, we're going to Cleveland on Thursday to cover Nina Turner's election. We'll be there in the final days before the election. And we're right now trying to organize a trip to Minnesota right after Cleveland to cover the ongoing protest of Line 3. So we're not talking, we're walking the walk. and covering very, very important stories. So we hope you could be with us. Sign up you have to sign up for Rockfin through our page. So rockfin.com/status coup. Rockfin.com/status coup. So do you want to take the David Pakman approach? Number one, I don't watch David Pakman, so I don't know what approach you're talking about. I don't think David Pakman is encouraging people to protest AOC and other squad members. I don't think David Pakman is suggesting to do an economic boycott. But again, I don't watch him, so I don't know. So I don't know how in your mind you're equating what I'm talking about as the David Pakman approach. Again, I'm starting to learn, live streams have never been my main interest. I really like the investigative reporting, but I'm starting to learn that people will hear whatever they want to hear. People on the internet, in politics, they just hear what they want to hear. And sometimes you just can't reason with people. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they hear things either you did not say or they hear what they want to hear. So, I think Ben just said it right. People don't do nuance anymore. And honestly, there's really not an economic incentive anymore to do nuance, particularly on YouTube. There is no, few exceptions, maybe Joe Rogan. There's very little economic incentive to be nuanced. The economic incentive on YouTube, on Twitter, elsewhere is clicky headlines, this person's blasting that person, conflict, sensationalism, online war. That's what helps a lot of people grow their brands, grow their channels, make money. And it might be good. Must see watch, must see TV, they call it, must see internet, but it's not going to actually get us where we want to go. And for the people telling you it will, or the people saying what I'm saying is to be diplomatic with the politicians or buddy up with the politicians, they're just misleading you. They're misleading you. And by the way, if you ask them what is their strategy, ask them what is their strategy to achieve Medicare for all, what is their strategy to achieve these things? I'd like to know. Do they think hashtagging fraud squad is the good strategy? That's your strategy? Or just belligerently screaming at politicians? That's your strategy? I'm genuinely, I haven't heard a strategy yet. I just haven't. So thank you for watching. I hope you guys will tune in tomorrow morning. If you are a Rockfin exclusive member, rockfin.com/status coup. I will see you on Rockfin tomorrow morning from the coal miners from Alabama striking outside BlackRock in New York City. Take care.